The microphone squeals, and the HOA green goes quiet. I'm at the raffle table with a wrapped box while Trent Malloy lifts his plastic cup and says, "To family values," like he trademarked the phrase. The neighbors chuckle. Kids with freeze pops stare blue tongues and wide eyes. I lift the box so the white ribbon catches the sun. "This won't take long," I say. Kayla, my only child, watches from a lawn chair, the smile on her face hairline cracked. I set the box down palm flat, and the speaker thumps once like a heartbeat. That's where you and I meet. But the road to this moment started 2 nights earlier in my kitchen with burnt coffee and a sentence you can't take back. It was Friday at 5:30. Cedar Rapids radio mumbled about thunderstorms and the bake sale at St. Luke's. The Maxwell house in my Mr. Coffee had turned bitter. A Menard's bag wrinkled under a small wrapped box on my table. I called like I do every year. "Happy 40, kiddo," I said. A hush, the clink of glass, then Kayla's voice smooth and far away. "Only people who matter are invited. Dad, you're not." The line went still, except for Trent's polite little laugh, the kind that fits in a real estate commercial. I stared at the handset like it might bite and set it down so gently you'd think it could bruise the wood. The box was small enough to hide behind my back and big enough to change a life. Inside lay a brass key to a cottage near Lake McBride, white siding, green shutters, a porch swing I'd hung myself. Under the tissue sat the deed, my name printed neat as a Sunday shirt. I'd planned to walk into whatever fancy place they'd booked, hand Kayla the box, and say what I'd practiced in the truck. "It's yours, honey. Build the porch you drew in crayon." Instead, I smoothed the wrapping like you smooth a child's hair after she's cried and stood there listening to the old house breathe. "My name's Hank Bishop. I'm 71, retired out of UPS after 36 years of lifting other people's plans across Blair's Ferry Road and past. I wore out 2 sets of knees before my wife Marla died, stroke quick as lights going out, and the ranch house learned how to be quiet. I kept moving, set posts, fixed screens, built steps that wouldn't slide out from under the folks who needed steady. I saved in coffee cans and then in accounts. The saving turned into the cottage and the key and the stubborn idea that a father can still give something that says, "You matter." Kayla was a fast kid with scabby knees, a believer in porch swings and cicadas. She became a teenager who rolled her eyes at my jokes, then a woman dazzled by rooms where people say, "Sir," without meaning respect. The day she brought Trent home, he shook my hand like he wanted to see what it was worth. Nice suit, nicer smile. The sort of man who takes up space with a checklist. I told myself to be hopeful. A parent does that even when the weather report says otherwise. Hope is a habit that's hard to quit. After the call, I drove anyway. Clean shirt, old Chevy. The box riding shotgun like a passenger with opinions. The evening smelled like cut grass and heat. At the Pheasant Ridge Steakhouse, the windows glowed so bright they looked like they were sweating. Lexus and BMW badges winked along the curb. Through the glass, I caught a flash of blue that was probably Kayla's dress and a room where napkins stood up like bishop hats. I didn't park. I kept the wheels turning past the valet smiles and their little jogs past the laughter that floated up and out as if the building were breathing. The cottage waited in the blue hour, neat as a promise. Fresh paint and pine floors that didn't complain, yet windows that breathed. I set the box on the kitchen island, traced the seam, and tried the words again. "It's yours," but the room swallowed them whole. On the porch, the swing gave one quiet creak when I touched it like a friend clearing his throat. Fireflies stitched green thread through the side yard while I sat with a short pour of good bourbon and the ache you get when a plan you've held too long stops fitting in your hands. Ruth Delgado came by the next morning with blueberry muffins and the face she wore for 50 years as a school secretary. "You didn't go in," she said. Not a question. Didn't seem like I'd add to the ambiance, I told her. She clicked her tongue. "Saw Trent at Riverside Casino Wednesday. Didn't look like business. Ruth doesn't gossip. She points to the dirt and hands you a broom." "Thank you," I said, and meant it. The truth I've learned has good shoes. It walks to your porch even when you're not ready to open the door. On the road back to town, I started seeing what you miss when you're still hoping. Trent grinning from a bus bench ad, "Elevate your lifestyle." Choa rules posted like commandments in Kayla's subdivision trash cans, hidden fences exactly so high porch decor approved. I pictured my girl living inside a life that needs permission to hang a wind chime. Maybe she chose it. Maybe he sold it to her. Either way, it fit like a shirt cut for someone else. Across the street, a young dad named Brad rolled a can to the curb. "Nice F-150, sir," he said. His boy wobbled on a scooter, tongue stuck out with effort. Trying to keep him off screens, Brad sighed. "I lose most days." "You're showing up," I said. "That counts." Through the bay window, I watched Kayla fuss with a clipboard while a caterer lined up trays. Trent kept his phone in his hand like it was part of him. A woman in a sharp blazer. Maya, I learned later, arrived, and I watched the smile on my daughter's face go tight like a seam yanked hard. A small thing. But once you see a small thing clearly, it opens a door you can't shut. I drove home with the radio off, not angry, so much as heavy the settling of dirt after the shovel stops. Houses are for shelter, yes, but also for the quiet where a person can hear himself think, and for the kind of space where love does not need to knock. Sunday after church at St. Luke's, Pastor Eldon poured coffee into a styrofoam cup and did what he's good at, listened. I told him what happened and what I hadn't done. He didn't offer a verse or a fix. He asked one question. Hank, who was that gift, meant to honor Kayla's values. Then or now, I didn't answer. He didn't push. He just patted the counter near the donuts like he'd set the right tool within reach. By Monday, the air turned thunder-heavy cicadas, grinding like old engines, and the sentence from the call kept circling my head, people who matter. Words can draw a line. A man has to decide whether to rub it out or trace over it in ink. That afternoon, a flyer slid from my mailbox and skittered across the porch boards like it had somewhere to be. Malloy Keller Realty Neighborhood Summer Cookout and Charity Raffle. Saturday. Showog Green. Bring a dish. Family values. I set the flyer under a magnet shaped like a corn cob and looked at the pantry shelf where I'd slid the box above the flour and the dusty tins of tomatoes. It felt heavier than any package I hauled in 36 years, and I hauled plenty. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do. I only knew I wasn't going to beg for a seat in a room where my name had to be measured before it counted. Some lines you don't erase, some you redraw in public where everybody can see how straight they run. Pastor Eldon's question rode home beside the wrapped box and didn't get out when I parked. Who was the gift meant to honor Kayla then, or Kayla now? Words heavy freight. I pulled the cigar box from the pantry, still faint with Marla's rose hand cream. Inside, rubber-banded deposit slips, creased UPS pay stubs, a Polaroid of Kayla at 8 on a porch swing I built out of 2x6s, bare feet, July grin. Years back, I drove the brown truck from sunup past supper, a job you measure in doorsteps, not applause. Ice on Blair's Ferry, August heat on First Avenue gravel that spit at your shins. I carried other people's plans to their doors. Nights I soaked the ache and counted not sheep but dollars, moving them from a coffee can to a savings account, then to a credit union that mailed the food pantry a fruit basket each December. Not noble. I like numbers to match work. When Kayla was small, she drew the same picture again and again, a house with a porch, a swing, sometimes curtains. So Mama can hear it, she said, and Marla kissed her hair, then mine. Years later, after the stroke took Marla in the middle of a Tuesday, Kayla stood on the porch and said the swing creaked like it missed somebody. It did. I sold the dented F-150, took the bus for a while, said yes to Saturday roots. The fishing trip I promised myself at 50 turned into overtime. I learned to fix what could be fixed and quit wrestling what wouldn't budge. Trent showed up when Kayla was tired of no. He called me sir and complimented the lawn like he was previewing a listing. "You've done well for yourself," he said, one of those sentences that carries an invisible scale. I took him to Pleasant Creek. He wore spotless sneakers and took a call while his bobber drifted into cattails. On the drive home, he said, "Hank, you ever think about leveraging assets?" I said, "I think about paying what I owe." The cottage listed last winter, a widow's daughter letting go. White siding, green shutters, a porch facing the sheltered end of Lake McBride. I walked through like a man touring a memory he hadn't made yet. At closing, my hand shook the way it did the day Kayla was born. I bought eggshell paint and a porch swing kit. I didn't need habit more than necessity. I didn't tell Kayla. Not because I wanted a scene later, but because I wanted the opposite, a quiet Sunday drive with coffee and paper cups, her talking about work, me not interrupting. We'd pull in, let the quiet do most of the talking. She'd touch the chain on the swing and say, "That porch," and I'd say, "It's yours." Pictures don't hold still when the person inside moves. Kayla's calls got shorter, holidays got complicated. When I met Trent's network, every man wore the same cologne and a smile turned up too high. I offered to pay the check. Trent said the firm had it. Kayla laughed like someone auditioning for a life with better lighting. I told myself not to judge. Judging is cheap. The bill comes due when you decide what to do with the facts. On the night of the call, the sentence with the barb tucked inside, I set the wrapped box beside my plate of meatloaf and green beans and looked at it like a fourth place setting. I thought about the last big thing. Marla and I bought a washing machine at Sears the weekend the rebate doubled and the delivery fee disappeared. We didn't run on fate. We ran on flyers and getting there early. After the drive-by at the steakhouse and the quiet at the cottage, Ruth Delgado brought blueberry muffins and the look she wears when she's about to hand you a truth with your napkin. "Saw Trent at Riverside Casino Wednesday," she said. "Didn't look like business. Ruth doesn't gossip. She posts facts to your porch and lets you choose where to tack them." I thanked her and walked her to her Buick. I went to St. Luke's and told Pastor Eldon the short version. He didn't try to fix it. He poured coffee and asked, "Who does this gift honor?" I didn't answer. He didn't mind. At home, I made a list on the back of a bill envelope because that's what men like me do when the floor tilts. Church done, breathe. Keep doing. Think of Kayla at 8, not 40. Underline. Don't let anger do the choosing. Star, decide what family means now. Circle. In the margin, I drew a porch with a hook for a wind chime. It looked like a kid drew it. That felt right. I took the box to the cottage that afternoon with a sack of deck screws and a thermos. The air had that Midwestern thickness that says a storm's already set its suitcase in your hall. I tightened the swing's eye bolts, not because they needed it, because I did. I sanded a pimple out of the rail and blew the dust away. The maple leaves applauded. 2 loons stitched the far bank. In the kitchen, I lifted the lid just enough to see brass and paper. "You matter," I said to the empty room. Back in town, the flyer sat under the corncob magnet on my fridge: Malloy Keller Realty Neighborhood Summer Cookout and Charity Raffle. Saturday. Family Values. I stood a while with my palms on the counter. Sometimes a man knows the next right thing without the steps between here and there. I didn't have a speech. I had a key, a deed, a question that wouldn't leave, and a line I meant to redraw in public. By evening, the cicadas were grinding in the oaks, and thunder kept its distance. I washed 2 coffee cups and set them upside down on the rack, habit betraying hope. I pinned the list to the corkboard: oil change dentist, VFW fish fry, and added one more line in block letters I could read without glasses: show up where the words were spoken. I slept like men sleep when a decision is half made on my side, one hand under the pillow, listening to the house learn my breathing. Morning would bring whatever it brought. I knew this much: I wouldn't ask for a chair at anyone's table. If truth needed a table, we had a whole green one waiting. I showed up in Kayla's subdivision late Friday morning with a travel mug and a trunk full of tools I didn't need. Old habit, showing up prepared for a thing I couldn't fix with a socket set. Hiawatha likes its lawns trimmed and its rules laminated. The HOA bulletin board by the mail kiosk listed violations like it was a scoreboard: hedge height, trash can concealment, front porch decor must be neutral. No chimes that produce noise audible to neighbors after 6 p.m. I read the last one twice. Imagine a life where wind has to ask permission to sing. The air was new-cut grass and bagged mulch. Amazon vans slid through like fish in a tank. A golden retriever named Tucker, according to his bone-shaped tag, tugged a woman down the sidewalk. She nodded at me with the cautious smile people give older men in old trucks. Across from Kayla's, a guy in a ball cap rolled a bin to the curb. "Morning," he said. "Morning," I said back. His boy hopped a scooter with both feet, bravery outrunning balance. "Nice truck," the man said. "You a contractor?" "Mostly retired," I said. "I fix whatever still remembers how to brake." He grinned. "Name's Brad, the wife's Jenny." He thumbed toward the house. "We bought into the fairy tale, good schools, quiet nights, a payment that makes you breathe shallow. HOA sends my blood pressure a Christmas card." "Looks tidy," I said. "Cost is tidiness with interest." He shielded his eyes, eyed Kayla's place. They're having that big cookout tomorrow. Been a circus. Mayor might show. Realtors love a ribbon. Do they? I said. He lowered his voice. The guy Trent, he's always working a room. Your daughter's nice. Oversmiles like she's trying out for something. He said it kindly. It landed like a brick. Kayla's blinds were open. Through the front window, I saw the motion of a day, arranged a caterer moving trays like chess pieces, my daughter checking a clipboard, someone testing the PA, a squeal that made the dog sit. Kayla wore a blue shirt, hair set the way the salon does when you've told them professional, not severe. She laughed, but the corners of her mouth didn't get the message all the way to her eyes. I sat in the cab with the window down, listening to the hum of air conditioners, the faint huff of a weed whacker 3 houses over. The subdivision had the feel of a hotel without luggage. People in athleisure mailboxes that matched like cousins at a reunion, houses that looked surprised to see dirt. My hands remembered what a porch rail felt like under sandpaper, the way wood warms to a palm. Trent stepped out of the front door with a man in golf clothes and the sort of watch that needs its own insurance policy. He clapped the guy's shoulder like he'd bought the shoulder himself. "We'll get you comped at Riverside," he said, voice carrying. "Network is life." He made life rhyme with strife. The golfer laughed like he'd been paid. Kayla leaned in to whisper something. Trent looked at his phone and waved her off with 2 fingers. I called her cell then, knowing it wouldn't go the way I wanted, and doing it anyway. She answered quick. "Dad, I'm buried. Can this wait?" "We're doing a charity raffle and a thing with the mayor." "I'm looking at your house," I said. "I could drop by with coffee." She paused just enough for disappointment to get up and stretch. "It's not a good time. Tomorrow's optics." I could have said a lot. I just said, "Be kind to yourself, kiddo." "You too," she said then, softer. "I'll call later." She didn't say when. We both heard it. The woman I'd watched pull up earlier, sharp blazer, dark hair, walked up the path carrying a crate of clipboards. She knocked, then let herself in. Through the glass, I saw Kayla's smile reset to something brave. The woman was younger, but not by much, the kind who writes thank you notes on real stationery. Later, I'd learn her name was Maya Keller. Partner, not fling. Brains, not flash. She spoke to Kayla with her head tilted like she was listening instead of waiting to talk. Trent passed behind them with a thumbs up so big it looked like a billboard. Brad tapped my window frame with 2 knuckles. "You good, sir?" "Good enough," I said. "Watch your mirrors," he said, nodding toward the HOA patrol golf cart trundling down the street, a man in a polo inspecting the world as if sight were a citation. "They ticket for parking facing the wrong way. Town wants money any way it can get it." "Doesn't everybody?" I said. Jenny crossed the street with a toddler on one hip and sunscreen in the other hand. "Sorry," she said to me, breathless but smiling. "Do you live around here?" "Cedar Rapids," I said. "Visit sometimes." "Nice to have grandpas on the block," she said. "Makes people behave." "That right?" "Mostly." She looked at Kayla's house and lowered her voice like the street had ears. "Hope your daughter's okay. She's been wound tight all week." "She's got a lot of plates spinning," I said. "Sometimes the plates aren't the problem," Jenny said. "It's the person throwing them." I didn't ask what she meant. People tell you the truth in tiny servings so they don't have to watch you choke on it. I drove to Little Bohemia Diner and sat at the counter where my elbows fit the groove I'd made using them. The waitress set coffee down the way folks do when they've been refilling you since the Bush administration. "You look like a man building something in his head," she said. "Trying to decide whether to paint a room," I said. She topped me off. "Primer first." Primer is truth you put down, so the color holds. I left a tip too big for a BLT and walked to the UPS store out of muscle memory. I made copies. I didn't strictly need the deed, a photo of the cottage porch, an old Polaroid of Kayla on a swing. The kid behind the counter said, "Nice place." I slid the picture back in the envelope like anything can be kept safe with paper. The afternoon bloomed with humidity. Cicadas wound up. Thunder checked the locks. I drove past Riverside Casino because I didn't know what else to do with an hour. The sign promised Player of the Month and Prime Rib. I parked in the back and sat until a man in a security shirt glanced twice. Inside it smelled like money trying not to be air freshener. Men in hats leaned over, felt like it could forgive them. I left before the carpet got under my skin. Ruth texted after supper, saw him again. Trent Harlan's jewelry and loan on 3rd Ave. Pawned something. Looked important. I stared at the words until the screen dimmed. Harlan's is 3 doors down from a barber who refuses to retire. Harlan keeps a green neon pawn sign that buzzes like a fly trapped in August. My feet took me there before I told them to. Closed, the sign said, but the door still chimed when I tried it. Habit. I peered through smudged glass at guitars without songs and tools without work. In the back, the outline of a safe. Marla's locket lived in a jewelry box under a sweater of hers I've never been able to give away. I felt something old and hot walk up my spine. It didn't feel like rage. It felt like balance due. I sat in the cab with the AC sputtering and called Ruth. You sure it was him? White BMW with the stupid plate, sold it, she said. He came out counting cash, looked at himself in the window like the window could autograph him. Did you see what he brought in? No. Hank, you okay? Better than yesterday, I said, which was not the same as okay. At home, I took down the cigar box again and laid the copies on the table like a hand in a quiet game. Deed. Photo. Polaroid. I pictured the locket small and warm against Marla's throat the day Kayla graduated, the way she touched it when she laughed. I imagined Trent's hand on it the way he'd touch anything he thought could be turned into something else. The flyer glowed on the fridge when I opened it for milk I didn't want. Family values, it said, in cheerful font. Maybe they would show up tomorrow. Maybe they'd need a definition. I turned off the kitchen light and let the house go dark around me. The room held. So did I. The bell over Harlan's door gave that tired jingle it's had since '83. The neon pawn sign buzzed like a trapped fly. A ceiling fan chopped the heat into pieces that didn't help. Harlan looked up from a glass case full of guitars that forgot who they belonged to. He's older than me, by a crow's foot, and a bad hip, a man who's seen rings change hands for groceries and then homecomings. Hank, he said like a question with room for a lie. Morning, I said. I'm not here to cause trouble. That's what people say right before they cause a little. I took a photo from my wall at Marla at Kayla's graduation June sun, on her face, her hand at her throat where the locket sat. Sterling, I said. Oval. Back's got a tiny scuff where it hits the clasp. Hinge sticks in November. Inside there's a picture of a baby with too much hair. Harlan held the photo without touching the memory. Policy's policy, he said. I can't show you what's in back. I'm not asking to see it, I said. I'm asking you to tell me if a thing like that walked through your door with a man who likes the sound of his shoes. He chewed that. The fan ticked. A lot of things walk through my door, he said, but he set the photo down careful. If a piece matching that description did happen to come in, it'd be on a ticket with a loan amount and a date. It'd sit a while collecting dust and interest. And if the original owner or someone acting like they care came in with that ticket or enough cash and proof, I could redeem it back into the right story. What's the loan amount on a piece like that? He named a number that made me swallow. Plus fees, he said, apologetic, but not sorry. I keep the lights on by keeping the lights on. If a person wanted to grease the path, I said, without stepping on policy, what could he walk out with? A copy of the claim number, he said, scribbling a 5-digit and an amount due on a sticky note like it was a grocery list. And advice, come back soon. Sentiment doesn't earn grace periods. I tucked the note into my shirt pocket and nodded. Like men nod when they've been given a map that still requires walking. Harlan. I said, half to him, half to the air. You ever feel like you've been volunteered to forgive something you didn't break? He smiled with one side of his mouth, every shift. The Lynn County Recorder's office smelled like paper, made to last in a printer that wasn't. Denise behind the counter wore readers on a chain and a cardigan that could survive a winter. How can I help you, sir? She asked in a voice that could direct traffic in a blizzard. I'm looking up a parcel record, I said, sliding Kayla's address on a torn envelope across the counter. And related instruments. We love a related instrument, she said, tapping keys like she'd built the database herself. Here we are. Original mortgage, assignment, home equity line of credit. Recent. She turned the monitor a touch professional but kind. Public record, she added, in case I needed it to be. The PDF filled with signatures I knew too well. My daughter's loopy K, a notary stamp beside a date that ran a chill under my shirt. adjustable rate, variable draws, a maximum that made my knees remember the job I'd left. Is the spouse. Co-borrower is not listed? Denise said like she was reading weather. But here's a power of attorney executed last spring. Limited. For financial matters. Can I get copies? You may, she said, printing with the sigh of a machine that longed for the simpler days of ink. I'll staple them too. We're fancy like that. I paid $4.75 in cash because some papers deserve to be bought with bills, not numbers. Denise slid them across with a receipt and the kind of look that doesn't ask questions and answers them anyway. Sir, she said, you've got good shoulders. They look tired. They've carried worse, I said, and meant it, and didn't. On a bench outside, I held the stack and let the sun lay its hand on my head. Across the street, a kid in a marching band t-shirt practiced snares on his knees. A woman balanced a pizza and a toddler. Lives thunked along, eating and tapping and working and loving, while in my lap lay proof that my daughter's house had been turned into a lever. Truth doesn't ring a bell. It presses on a bruise you're pretending isn't there. Ruth met me at Little Bohemia Diner with the legal pad she keeps in her purse for when the world needs organizing. Tell me everything she said, and the waitress refilled us without asking. I pushed the copies across. Ruth read, quick lips moving. She underlined the power of attorney with a fingernail. He has his hand in the jar, she said. And he told you don't matter. He told her, I said. She told me. Ruth's mouth flattened into something that could cut bread. Where do we go next? Court records, I said. If Riverside's got a claim on him, it'll be in the docket. She already had the county case search pulled up on her phone. Her thumbs did the walking. Trent Malloy, she said, and then there. Small claims last year, Riverside Casino and Golf Resort v. Trent Malloy. Satisfied, but the docket told a story marker issued marker unpaid demand made judgment entered paid late. We screenshotted because sometimes survival is remembering and sometimes it's being able to show somebody else. Pastor Eldon didn't blink at the pile when we spread it on his office coffee table beside a ceramic cross a third grader made in '98. He read like a man who knows how to hold other people's pain without letting it spill on the carpet. What are you thinking, Hank? He asked finally. I'm thinking the insult was public, I said. I'm thinking the truth doesn't live in hallways. I'm thinking about a key and a word I can't take back and about a boy who might sleep better if a porch swing creaked outside his window. Boy, he said. VFW knows a young vet, I said. Eli, HVAC apprentice, couch surfing with a 6-year-old. I heard it in line for fish fry and it stuck. Eldon leaned back until the chair spoke. Grace and boundaries aren't enemies, he said the way a carpenter might say measure twice. Mercy without truth is mush. Truth without mercy is a weapon. You don't carry weapons, Hank. No, I said, touching the edge of the deed. I carry boxes. He nodded. Then deliver what belongs where it will be cared for. And when you speak, speak as a man who builds, not a man who burns. I don't know if I can do both. You can, he said, and then he smiled like a secret. You already are. On my way out, the church hallway bulletin board needed straightening, so I straightened it. Photo of last fall's chili cook-off. A flyer for Grief Group, a thank you from the food pantry with a picture of a cardboard box open to cans labeled choice. Mercy and truth side by side, asking for volunteers. Back home, I put the papers into a manila envelope and wrote in block letters, names don't need raising when the facts do. I put the envelope on the passenger seat where the wrapped box had ridden all week. The Chevy smelled like coffee pine sawdust ground into the mat and the ghost of Marlboro from some 20-year-old delivery I still remembered, because the man at the door had called me brother and meant it. I drove by the HOA green. Volunteers were staking a banner that read, Family Summer Cookout and Charity Raffle, in letters that looked like they wanted to be balloons. Kids chased each other in figure eights. A woman chalked a hopscotch that started with a heart. A man tested a mic and already annoyed the oak tree. Kayla crossed the grass in sensible flats, a clipboard at war with her hands. Trent pointed at a table, and 3 people moved like chess. Brad waved from his driveway. Tomorrow's the circus, he said. I've got my ticket, I said. Hope the elephants behave. He squinted at my truck, read nothing, and nodded like we'd decided something together. I parked at home and sat with the engine ticking cool. The porch swing at the cottage creaked in my head the way a clock does when you've already decided to get up before it rings. I took the wrapped box from the pantry and held its weight. The ribbon had a crease from the first plan. I smoothed it with my thumb. I wasn't angry. I was ready. Before bed, I called the VFW and left a message for the commander. "This is Hank Bishop. I heard about a young vet named Eli who could use a hand. Call me." I set the phone down in the house, listened. Old walls are good at that. The cicadas wound down like an engine that finally found idle. The list on the corkboard grew one more line in my block letters: speak plain. Bring proof. Hand the key to a future. Sometimes a line gets drawn for you. Sometimes you pick up the chalk. The VFW commander called it 8 sharp, that old military punctuality carrying through the line. "Bishop, this is Commander Dale Pruitt, Post 788. Got your message about a young vet. We've got one Eli Turner. Good kid. HVAC apprentice, single dad. You free this morning?" Name the place, I said. We met at the post cinderblock walls flags that had learned the shape of the wind they'd served under. Coffee in a steel urn that could survive a storm and still pour. Dale shook my hand, then waved a young man over. Late 20s, lean, careful eyes. A boy with a maybe 6 tugging a baseball cap down over ears, too big for now, but right-sized for later. "Mr. Bishop," the young man said, straight-backed without showing off. "Eli." "Mason," the boy said softly, one hand on Eli's pant leg, the other dragging a rubber dinosaur. We sat at a card table gashed by decades of rummy. Eli laid a spiral notebook on it, calculations for ductwork, a to-do list written in block letters that looked like mine. He talked about the apprenticeship and the side jobs, about couch surfing between his sister's place and a buddy's. "Mason's been a champ," he said, ruffling the boy's hair. "But a kid needs a place where the night sounds don't change." "What do you hear at night?" I asked Mason. He thought. "Sometimes a train, sometimes big people talking." "You like any sounds?" "Wind," he said, "like at the park. The spinny thing sings." "Wind chime," Eli supplied. "Yeah," Mason said, "that." The word walked straight through me and went out to the porch at the lake. I pushed a napkin and a dull pencil across the table. "Draw it for me." He drew a square with a triangle roof and a stick hanging from a line. He added a figure under it, arms up like he was catching the song. Eli watched me watching his boy. "Sir," he said, braced. "We're not asking for anything we didn't earn, just telling you our situation." "I asked you here," I said, "to listen." We talked practical. Utilities. Commuting to job sites in Cedar Rapids. If a porch swing would be a hazard or a help with a 6-year-old who could turn stillness into a game only a second grader could win. Eli didn't oversell himself. The words came measured, like he'd learned the hard way that promises are heavy if you mean to carry them. After they left, Dale put a hand on my shoulder. "You thinking of doing something that'll make me cry in front of the Marines?" "Maybe," I said. He grinned. "Do it. We'll call it dust." I drove to the UPS store and asked the kid behind the counter, Trevor, per the tag, to print the porch photo big enough to see from the back of a church hall. He asked what size. "Make it honest," I said. He picked something that wouldn't buckle when held up to the air. While it printed, I slipped the deed into a clear sleeve and made a copy of the copy. Men like me, layer-proof like winter clothing. I slid the county record's HELOC power of attorney into a manila envelope labeled Facts. In another, I placed the casino docket screenshot Ruth had sent and the sticky note Harlan had given me, claim number and amount due. On the front, I wrote in block letters, "Locket your move." Ruth met me in the parking lot with a sack lunch, and that look again. "You're really going to do this on the green?" "They drew the line out there," I said. "I'm just walking to it." She worried the paper sack. "It'll sting Hank." "She told me I didn't matter," I said. "I can handle the sting." "Not you," she said, and let the rest hang between us like laundry on Saturday. At home, I laid everything out on the dining table, porch photo, deed, manila envelopes, the wrapped box. I polished my church shoes with an old t-shirt and worked a toothbrush into the stitching like the shoes could tell the difference. I ironed a clean shirt and hung it on the door frame. I shaved slow enough to count the years in the mirror. Before I put the razor down, I saw Marla over my shoulder, not a ghost so much as a memory with good timing. "Mercy and truth," I said to the glass. both hands. I called Pastor Eldon and told him my plan in a dozen plain words. He didn't add any, just laughed softly and said, "Measure twice, cut once. Then sand the edges so they don't splinter anybody who didn't deserve it." Before supper, I took a drive out to the cottage with the box on the seat like a co-pilot who'd never learned directions. The lake wore late light. I checked the swing bolts like a man who can't sit without first making sure the sitting won't fail him. On the porch rail, I hung the spare key on a nail and spun it, the ring clicking. "You'll have company soon," I told the air, and the air kept the secret. Back in town, my voicemail blinked Kayla. "Hey, Dad, big day tomorrow? Charity mayor, all that? I know you care about community stuff. If you want to maybe swing by, I'll be busy, but I'll look for you." She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath since she learned how. Night. I sat with that a while, invitation-shaped but drafted by a committee. Then I hit play again and listened for the part that mattered. There tucked in the pause, the girl who once drew a porch in crayon. She was still in their crowd or no crowd. I made one more stop at Harlan's. The bell gave up its old jingle. Harlan pushed his glasses up with the back of his wrist. "Back so soon, Hank." "Just to ask you not to sell that locket out from under me," I said. "If it exists. If it's what I think it is." "It exists," he said. "And my heart's not that small. But policy is policy. Bring me the cash and some proof, and I can redeem it to family. Or bring me a customer with a ticket, and I can redeem it to a lesson." "Thank you," I said. "You going to make a speech, Bishop?" "No," I said. "I'm going to deliver a package." At home, I tucked a small note under the ribbon on the wrapped box. Not a speech, not even a sentence, just 2 words I could stand behind. Show up. I slid the porch photo into a cardboard backing so it wouldn't bend when my hand did. I put the manila envelopes into my truck in the order I meant to lay them on a table. Facts first, then locket your move, then the deed, then the box. Last I set a small ziplock of screws and an Allen wrench in the console. Habit. A man who builds is naked without a tool within reach. I slept an honest sleep. Not perfect. Enough. In the morning, I buttered toast, drank coffee that didn't taste like penance, and put on the shirt I'd ironed. The neighborhood kids had chalked a hopscotch overnight on the sidewalk in front of my house. The first square said, "Start." The last said, "Home," with a crooked heart for the O. I stepped over it not out of superstition, but because a man with a plan ought not take chances with a good omen. On the way, I swung by the post. Dale met me on the steps, hand extended. "You need backup?" he asked, half kidding. "I need a quiet corner and a working mic," I said. "You'll have both as much as a raffle allows." He squeezed my shoulder. "Proud of you, Bishop." The word landed without getting its feet dirty. I pulled onto the HOA green and cut the engine. The banner flapped, "Family Summer Cookout and Charity Raffle." Folding tables made long temporary roads across the grass. Maya adjusted a sign. Kayla checked a list. Trent shook hands like he was getting paid per grip. Kids ran zippered lines between coolers. Someone taste-tested baked beans with a plastic spoon and winced in honest appraisal. The speaker popped as it woke. I lifted the box from the passenger seat and felt the old steadiness walk back into my hands. "Show up," I told the ribbon. Then I did. The mic squealed once and settled like it remembered how to behave. Kayla's clipboard hung slack at her side. Trent's grin aimed itself at the crowd, the way a lawn sprinkler aims at everything that will hold still. He lifted his cup. "To family values," he said, and people who'd been taught to clap when a man says a slogan clapped. I stepped to the raffle table with the wrapped box in my hands. "This won't take long," I said into the mic. My voice sounded like I hear it in the morning plain as toast. "Name's Hank Bishop. I'll use my minute, then I'll give it back." A kid with a blue freeze pop stared at the ribbon like it could pop. A dog perked at the speaker crackle. The oak left us in a patchwork of shade and sun, and somewhere a crock pot did its best with baked beans. First, I said a story. When my daughter was 8, she drew the same picture over and over. A porch with a swing. A hook for a wind chime so the wind could sing when the house forgot how. I lifted a cardboard-backed photo of a white cottage with green shutters and a swing under a maple. I spent 36 years hauling other people's plans, saved until I could build one for her. That's this porch. Kayla's chin trembled once, then locked. Maya, standing near the sign-in table, put a hand over a stack of raffle tickets like she wanted to keep paper from blowing away. I plan to hand my girl this box on her birthday, I said, and say, "It's yours." Then I made a phone call and heard a sentence you can't put back in your mouth. Only people who matter are invited. Dad, you're not. I didn't look at Trent. Looking at a mirror won't change the face you're wearing. I set the photo down, kept going. Second, I said facts. No speeches. I opened a manila envelope labeled facts and laid down copies so they faced the crowd, not me. This is a public record of a home equity line of credit in my daughter's name. This is a docket from Riverside Casino that says the markers didn't pay themselves. And this, I said, touching the corner of a sticky note stuck to its own truth, is a claim number and amount due at Harlan's Jewelry and Loan for a sterling oval locket that belonged to my wife. It has a hinge that sticks in November. Inside is a picture of a baby with too much hair. Trent stepped forward, palms out like he was calming cattle. Okay, whoa, this is a private. Maya moved half a step, not siding against him so much as holding the space open. Let him finish, she said, low but sharp enough to cut the ribbon in the air. I turned to Kayla and held out the sticky note. Honey, this is the information you'll need to redeem your mother's locket. I won't ask if you knew. I'll ask you to fix it. I kept the HELOC copies in my palm a beat. These don't belong to me. They belong to the part where we all stop pretending money is a personality. A murmur rose like wind through corn. It wasn't mean. It was old recognition. Jenny held her toddler a little higher, like she wanted him to see what decency looks like from above. Brad lowered his cap and nodded to himself. Ruth's jaw was set, but her eyes were kind. Last I said, and set the wrapped box on the table so the ribbon caught a sunbeam delivery. I peeled the ribbon back, folded it into a coil, and lifted the lid. The brass key lay where I'd left it, the deed in its clear sleeve under tissue. I saved this for family, I said. Turns out family is the people who show up even when nobody's keeping score. Commander Dale Pruitt, who could run a room by just breathing steady, had drifted close. I caught his eye. He tipped his chin toward the edge of the crowd, and there stood Eli Turner, crisp in a clean t-shirt that had been folded on purpose, one hand on his boy's shoulder. Mason wore his cap crooked and his courage straight. Eli, I said, will you bring Mason up here, son? They crossed the grass like it was a tightrope, and the whole town held the net. I thought about telling Eli to take his hat off. Then I thought better. Respect isn't a posture, it's a choice. I slid the photo of the cottage next to the open box so Eli and Mason could see the swing. This is the place, I said. White siding, green shutters, porch swing, faces a maple. There's a hook for a wind chime already set. The deed's clean. The utility account can be in your name Tuesday. Keys. I touch the brass, go to hands that will keep doors open. Mason traced the swing in the picture with his finger. Does it make the wind sing? He asked. It does, I said, and my throat found out how narrow it could be and still pass air, every time. Eli swallowed like the room had changed pressure. Mr. Bishop, he said, voice smaller than his shoulders. I can't. We can't. You can, I said. It's not charity, it's delivery. You've been showing up, that matters. Someone started clapping because they didn't know what else to do, and then it turned into what they meant. The sound wasn't for me. It was for the space between a wrong sentence and a right action. It was for a boy who might sleep better, because a swing remembered a song. Trent tried for the mic. I put my hand over it and moved it 2 inches away. I'm not finished, I said, and I wasn't unkind when I said it. I'm just measuring to the end of the board. I held the mic again and turned back to Kayla. I can't tell you who to be, I said. I can tell you I built this with a picture of you at 8 in my head. If you want that porch, the person you bring to it matters more than the shoes you wear there. I nodded at the sticky note in her hand. Start with the locket. Start with what was supposed to be around your mother's neck and found itself on the wrong counter. After that, we can talk about swings. Kayla made a sound that wasn't a word and wasn't silence either. Tears lined her lower lids, heavy as anything I'd carried. She looked at the sticky note and then at me, the way a person looks at a bridge that might hold. "Dad," she said, and there was my girl right there in the middle of a woman in a good blouse. "Please, after this, can we talk?" After I said yes, Maya touched Kayla's elbow, not to steer her, just to let her know the ground hadn't given way. Trent puffed like a bullfrog who'd found out the pond wasn't impressed. "This is slander," he said to nobody who could sign anything. "This is..." Public record Denise from the recorder's office said from 3 rows back, holding up her program like a credential. "And small claims dockets are searchable at any hour." The laughter that followed wasn't cruel. It was the kind adults use to let air back into a tense room. I picked up the deed, slid it back into the box, and placed the brass key in Eli's palm. Mason covered his dad's hand with both of his like he was keeping a bird from flying away. "There's a spare key on a nail on the porch rail," I said. "You'll find it. It's there because I was waiting for the wind to have company." I handed Kayla the manila envelope labeled, "Locket Your Move." Her fingers closed around it like scripts close around actors who have to choose which line to say next. "I'm not shutting a door," I said to her, so only the first rank could hear. "I'm naming the house it's attached to." The oak shivered a little. The mic popped once more like it had an opinion, and then got over it. I passed the mic back to the teenager running the sound, who looked at me like I'd just told him he could borrow the truck. I didn't bow. I'm not that kind of man. I looked out at neighbors and relatives by zip code and folks who came for hot dogs and stayed for truth, and I said, "Thank you for the minute." Then I stepped away and let the day decide what it wanted to be from there. After the clapping thinned to neighbor talk and the line for baked beans reformed like a river that had only paused for a rock, Kayla came to me under the oak. The sun stitched her hair with copper. She held the manila envelope like a steering wheel she wasn't sure how to use. "Dad," she said, voice steady until it wasn't, "can we walk?" We found the curb by the hopscotch some kid had chalked at the start of the morning and the end of someone's patience. A teen hustled past with a tray of buns. A boy tried on his dad's sunglasses and saw a different world until he tripped. Kayla smoothed her skirt, then laughed at the futility of smoothing anything right now. "You made me look small," she said, not accusatory, not forgiving, just honest. "I named what was already shrinking you," I said, "and I gave the room a reason to look past it." She breathed in like she meant to start all the way over. "He said we needed the HELOC to build leverage, that it was how people get ahead now. He called the locket non-productive. I told myself we were sophisticated, not cruel." She turned the envelope over. I knew about the casino markers after the late-night calls, but I thought he'd be who he said at dinner. "We've all bought a dinner that looked like a promise," I said. "You could have called me out alone." "I could have," I said. "You told me I didn't matter in a room I couldn't enter. Some things you put back where you found them." She glanced toward the raffle table where Eli held the box like it could scratch if handled wrong. Mason still traced the porch swing and the photo's small finger walking a path. "Is there a path back to you?" she asked. "There's a door," I said. "It sticks in November. Takes 2 hands. You start by redeeming your mother's locket. After that, you tell the truth to yourself before you tell it to me. After that, you show up. I'm on a swing with room beside me." Her mouth trembled and set. "Okay," she said. "I can do one thing today. Harlan's is open till 5 on Saturdays." She lifted the envelope. "I'll bring it to you at church tomorrow, if you'll have me." "I'll set a chair," I said. She squeezed my hand. It wasn't much. It was a start. Ruth appeared the way wind happens, present before you notice it. She handed us 2 styrofoam cups of lemonade. "I hate drama," she announced, "and I love truth. Both can happen on a Saturday." She touched Kayla's shoulder with a thumb's worth of mothering and moved on to monitor the crockpots like they were unruly students. Trent paced at the edge of the crowd phone held high like it could get better reception on a different moral level. Maya stood with him saying little. Sometimes not stepping closer is what decency does to keep the line straight. When I caught her eye, she nodded once professional courtesy for a man who just cleared a job site of safety hazards. I found Eli and Mason at the shade line with Commander Pruitt. Eli's jaw had lost its clench and found awe. "Sir," he said, "I feel unsteady." "That's normal," I said. You're holding more future than you're used to." He laughed, then blinked it away. "We'll take good care of her." "I know," I said. "Take Mason by after the cookout to see where his wind can sing." We drove out together near dusk in a 2-truck procession. The lake took the sky and kept most of it. I let them go in first. It's a holy thing, someone crossing into a house that will memorize their weight. Eli walked the rooms like he was learning a language that had always been in his mouth. Mason ran a hand along the porch rail and found the spare key where I'd hung it. He turned it into a little symbol. The ring clicked on the nail like a clock finding itself. It's the sound he said hushed, like at the park. "It's yours," I said. "The swing knows how to hold on." We sat on the porch and let the swing do the talking. A loon stitched the far bank. Maple leaves made the soft applause of people who understand the show and don't need an encore. Eli's shoulders dropped one floor. "I'll add a second smoke detector," he said, "because men like us fix by thinking out loud." "Put felt pads on the kitchen chairs," I said. "Little things keep peace from squeaking." When they left with the key, Mason walked backward down the path, waving then forward again, so he wouldn't test how forgiving the ground could be. Their taillights drew careful commas across the gravel. I stayed on the swing until the day cooled enough to tuck in. Sunday morning came with that particular church smell, coffee hymnals, dust warmed by stained glass. I sat halfway back where the light falls like a benediction. The organ found blessed assurance, and the congregation remembered how to sing together. Halfway through the second verse, the side door opened and a woman slipped in, head down, envelope in hand. Kayla slid into the pew beside me and set the manila on my knee. "I redeemed it," she whispered. "He pawned it for rent on an office we couldn't afford. The hinge still sticks in November." After the service, Pastor Eldon stood in the narthex and shook hands like a man counting prayers. He took in the locket in Kayla's palm, the light on her face, the way her shoulders had learned a new angle overnight. "Mercy and truth," he said softly, as if practicing the words in case the day needed them again. She wore the locket for coffee hour. Denise from the recorder's office poured her a cup like proof of life. Ruth hugged her. Jenny introduced her to the toddler who slapped the locket and then looked scandalized with himself. Kayla laughed a sound that hadn't remembered itself in a while. In the afternoon, she packed a bag. No slammed doors, no Facebook announcements. She told Trent she was done being inventory. He tried the old tools humiliation promises a calendar, none of which work on a woman who's seen her father give away a house key in front of a town and survive. She moved into a month-to-month near the church and started counseling with a woman whose office has quilts. She showed up at VFW fish fry and passed potato salad like it was contraband and the kind of good that gets you forgiven. I didn't change my will that week. I didn't change it the next. I left the door I'd promised, and I left the spare key where a nail could hold it. Boundaries aren't the opposite of love. They're the porch rail that keeps the toddler from finding out how far down the yard goes all at once. On a Tuesday evening at the cottage, the swing found its rhythm with 2 people on it. Kayla watched the lake make lace out of wind and said, "I lived so long trying to be invited by people who keep lists." She touched the locket, then the chain that held it. "This feels like a name tag I can live with." "You can always hang a chime where the rules don't reach," I said. "You can always call your old man before you're sure what to say." She smiled at the word old like it was a compliment. We watched a boy and his dad, the new ones, carry a box of kitchen things up the path. Eli waved with the hand that wasn't holding history. Mason asked if the porch could hold a fort. "It's held worse," I said, borrowing from my own lie and making it true. That night after I left them to their first supper, I drove home past the Pheasant Ridge Steakhouse. The windows still glowed with manufactured summer. Men in jackets leaned over tables where nothing of weight was being lifted. I didn't feel spite. I felt distance the way a man feels satisfied he measured right the second time. My house welcomed me with its usual creaks. The clock in the bedroom kept its appointment with every minute. If you're listening with someone you love, take this as permission to call them after the credits. If you're listening alone, let a porch in your mind make room beside you. Hang something small where the air can make a sound you recognize. And if this story put a finger on a bruise you've been protecting, share it with someone who shows up. We build better when we measure with more than our own hands. Tell a neighbor they matter. Forgive what can be forgiven without pretending it never happened. Subscribe if you want more ordinary justice told plain, and pass it on to the person who needs a spare key today.